Welcome to episode 13 of Juan's World. I was debating whether to have an episode 13, but I decided that it wouldn't be unlucky. And there's a lot of complications, of course, that have to do with my topic today, which is faith and evidence. I mean, today is Friday the 13th. So I figured, okay, gotta have an episode 13 on Friday the 13th. Feel a little bit like Apollo 13, though. Not sure whether there's going to be a disaster that I have to recover from. But it's pretty good to challenge superstitions, and I'm going to do that. And also, if you've been paying attention, you'll know that I've been in China for the last 2 weeks, and I'm just getting back into the swing of things. So my cold open here is a view of my street in the morning, so that you know I'm back in Cambodia and back ready to talk about faith and evidence, and in particular today, religion versus science. The religion versus science non-debate is almost always cast by scientists in terms of faith versus evidence, and religion is all about faith and science is all about evidence, and I've already muddied those waters a bit in the last 2 episodes. Now I'm going to go a little step further, so let's get into it. Okay, here's my handsome face. I'm sorry, I'm going to be doing talking heads for this episode, and I'm not going to make it terribly long. The last one was 1 hour, and that was obviously too long. Shows you how much I like to ramble. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit shorter today. And I want to just recap the episodes on faith and evidence first, and then try to put them together to make some kind of sense. Faith and evidence, I demonstrated, I hope, are aspects of both magic and science, or religion and science, and that the old canard that religion is all about faith and science is all about evidence, that people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Richard Dawkins go on and on about, just shows that they don't really understand the nature of religion and they don't really understand the nature of science. What I hope I've demonstrated is that science contains some elements of faith and religion contains elements of evidence. It's a question of the type of faith, the type of evidence, and the amount of it. And we need to be aware of the faith that exists within mathematics and science, and we need to be aware of the evidence that exists in magic and religion. And it's probably a good thing that I'm doing this on Friday the 13th, because I could use evidence for this. I could say, okay, let's look at the 365 days of the year, and let's see if anything bad happens on Friday the 13th, or things happen in a more chaotic or disastrous way on Friday the 13th and on other days. And I'm sure that we'll find there is zero correlation. We'll also find there's zero correlation between the full moon, which is coming up, the harvest moon, and Mid-Autumn Festival in China. Is there something particularly weird or loony? Remember that lunacy comes from luna, which is the Latin word for the moon. Like, are lunatics affected by the moon? Do werewolves come out? I don't know. I've never seen a werewolf. But I don't know that werewolves do not exist based on empirical evidence, because not seeing a werewolf does not mean they do not exist, if you like all those negatives. You can't just say, I haven't seen a werewolf, therefore they don't exist. You can say, I have seen a werewolf, therefore they do exist, but not the opposite. And that also gets me to discussions about the existence of God. I can take it on faith that God exists. And Neil deGrasse Tyson can point to me and say, ha ha, see, that's faith. But I can say just the same to him. I can say, you don't believe in God, and that is also based on faith. Because you cannot use evidence to show that God does not exist. Being an atheist or being a Christian or a Buddhist or any kind of belief in God or lack of belief in God is faith. Oh dear. So I'm muddying the waters quite deliberately to show that the debate, or what I'm calling a pseudo-debate, is probably better described as a non-debate, because both sides are at fault. So go to your rooms. That you need to rethink your position. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Richard Dawkins are saying, I like science better than I like religion. It does more for me. Okay, that's fine. But some people, like the Pope, for example, or at least I hope, is saying, I like science, but I also like religion, and if I have to choose, I would choose religion, but I really don't want to choose. But religion does things for me. So what does religion do? I think probably the most important thing it does is that it relieves stress in people when there is uncertainty, and especially when science fails them. Like, science can't do everything. It can't cure every disease. It can't solve every natural disaster. It can't even explain so many things that go wrong. I would challenge you at some point to look up all the things that science cannot explain. It's a lot. And there's also a lot of things that science doesn't even consider. It doesn't talk about the origins of a great deal of human feelings and emotions, because it can't. It can't even define them. It can't define love. I don't have a comment section here, but I would challenge you to define love. You can say, well, I know it when I feel it. Well, that's not very scientific. And certainly your relationships with people you love are likely not to be very scientific. We all know about Mr. Spock from Star Trek. Of course, he's a parody, but he's a deliberate parody showing that logic and science are not useful when it comes to human relations. Or can you use science to tell me why one particular painting or one particular sculpture is better than another? No, you can't, because these are not objectifiable scientific matters. They are subjective, and oh gosh, that means that next time I'm going to have to talk about the fact that objective and subjective are not opposites. It's not a legitimate dichotomy. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. But anyway, the point I want to leave you with today is that we can't make these simple dichotomies between religion and science, or between faith and evidence. Kind of reminds me of the yin and yang symbol, which I'll probably end with, that yin and yang are separate, but there's a little bit of yin in yang, and there's a little bit of yang in yin. So, yes, religion and science are different in many ways, but there's a little bit of science in religion, and there's a little bit of religion in science. So on that note, I'll wish you a happy Friday the 13th, and be well, and I will see you on Tuesday for your next cooking class.